Okay, great. So just some housekeeping items. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat as we go. I'll try to discuss those, uh, at appropriate stopping points. If you don't get a sufficient answer and you want to follow up afterwards too, contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation, or if you guys don't know. The link to this will be sent out as well, but it's very important. We feel like we want to make sure we're all on the same page live as we are starting tomorrow. We didn't want to do it too far in advance because then maybe some of the protocols and things get a little bit lax. So without further ado, I just want to say welcome to everyone. And if I look off to the side, it's because I'm looking at my second monitor here on the side. So I just want to say welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time, this evening. Like I said, at Tecumseh, we've spent the better part of the last 5 or 6 weeks working on this plan. This comes together based on a lot of work from our board of directors, our coaches, our staff, working with other clubs, across Canada, and across Ontario, sharing best practices, working with Ontario Soccer, with Canada Soccer, putting together all the information we can, from pretty much every resource we can locate and access in order to make an effective but most importantly, safe return to play plan. Some of you have seen part of this information before as part of your return to play presentation, and I know there's still with individual teams some stuff to go out from coaches, but as a club, we want to make sure we go through this. So if you're not familiar with myself, my name is Ryan Madone. I'm the director of coaching here at Tecumseh Soccer Club. I'll be presenting this plan. I just wanted to talk about the Tecumseh's teamwork. So not only did we have everyone from our club contribute to this, I just want to say it was we've been meeting bi-weekly, like twice a week, with all technical directors from across Canada, but mostly Ontario, and we've been sharing this information. And it would not have been possible, without all the other clubs that we've been working together for the last, since the beginning of this, but most importantly, the last 6 weeks. And then I just want to say a personal thank you to Joey Lombardi from Brampton and Dave Benning from Pickering Soccer Club, as they went above and beyond in sharing and providing resources, and we've spent a lot of our time working with them and sharing best practices. And we felt like if we could make the best plan possible for everyone, we'd want to share and have everyone be a part of it. And this item was actually, this presentation is what we presented to and share with other local clubs as well. So just, Tecumseh Soccer Club, we're back. Very excited. The energy level has been super high with the kids and the coaches and the parents. The last, few weeks since we've announced this. Just some things we're going to talk about, our pandemic policy, research and education that went into this plan, the government consultation that was involved, planning and preparation, our strategy and how we do it, our plan approval process, what our overall operational plan, some individual action plans that our staff focused on, and then we talked a little before that we're going to be continuing to self-evaluate. Just want to go on and talk about from a content disclaimer, perspective. I'll leave this up here and I'll let you read it. I'm not gonna, but this is not a substitute for professional advice. The information is changing constantly. We don't pretend to be, Ontario Health or making recommendations on behalf of the provincial or national health authorities. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us at admin@tecumsehsoccerclub.com, especially pertaining to this plan. A little bit about the research and education that went into this. First, it started with Canada Soccer and the Canadian sport governing bodies. So we started sharing best practices not only in soccer, but across all the sports. We did a comprehensive review of all the provincial sport RTPs. So not just Ontario, but every province. From BC Southeast to PEI in Nova Scotia, and we wanted to make sure that we took the best practices in each. Then Ontario Soccer released its return to play plan, its policy, and its documents, and we felt that was a tremendous resource. We continued our collaboration of national youth license clubs and directors, so that goes to all the largest clubs and highest licensed clubs in Ontario, and across the country. I believe there's 47 of us now, 39 plus the pro clubs. And then we had to assess and review the risk at club level. What we talked about with government consultation, we took on the federal government guidelines. And then we had our Ontario Regional Response and Action Plan, so from our province. So when we talked about the federal and provincial response, we review our regional specific guidelines with our municipality first, and then the local Windsor-Essex Health Unit, with the assistance of our town of Tecumseh. We're fortunate. We feel like as a town, the town of Tecumseh was very proactive on these items, so we're lucky to be a part of that municipality. When we talk about planning and preparation, we talk about policy, which will be part of the posting on the website, our procedures, which we talk about, our strategy and how we do it, and then our communications, which aside from all the distribution and email communications, part of this is the video webinar today. What our pandemic policy was created is it's simple. It's just a policy for club and member protection. Made sure it's board approved. Made sure it aligned us with national and provincial recommendations, and then it's publicly shared. So again, all of this will be shared on the Tecumseh website. It goes up and it will be priority live on the front page while we're returning to train right now. Our province's action plan in response to COVID was first how we talk about phase one, where we are, and then stage two, a gradual restart, and then stage three, and some areas of Ontario are moving into this at the end of this week. Obviously, we know that Windsor was a little bit slower into stage two, so it'll slowly get into stage three. And as provinces, we're talking about this plan. Canada Soccer then released Canada Soccer's return to soccer guidelines. So they very simply said federal stay-at-home order is eased. Then the provincial or territorial restrictions eased, which started to happen in Canada. Our municipal field and facility usage restrictions were eased. That happened for us when we got into stage two as a region. Our provincial Ontario Member Association approved our return to play plan, and then we complete our return to soccer assessment tool. And all that is just to make sure that we have everything we need, as we go. So Ontario Soccer decided that they'd be mirroring the government of Ontario with the regional approach for the restart to sports. So, Ontario Soccer has been provided with the direction of return to play protocol. Canada Ontario Soccer approved the protocol. All affiliated clubs must read and understand the return to play, go through and develop their own recommendations, develop our plans, and then go through the risk assessment tool and be approved by their municipality. In a summary of Ontario Soccer's phased approach, it was very simply phase one was just a return to training. Phase two was a return to training and modified games. So that just meant that there's contact in our training sessions. And phase three is when we actually return to soccer. We felt that there was a lot of confusion based on Ontario stages and soccer phases because they're different. So Ontario stage three might mean that we get in soccer phase two. So we try to keep it simple that right now we're returning to train. And that message will be what's going out, starting tomorrow, because we're returning to training. When we're allowed to do modified games and scrimmages within ourselves, that's when we're returning to playing. That's when it will feel like full-fledged playing. And then phase three will be in return to compete. So that's when we're going to be talking about playing against other clubs and potential leagues. Just again, a little description on what return to training meant. It meant that we have modified training, no contact, no league, no exhibitions, obviously limited training. And then phase two, when we talk about return to play, that's when we can now have inter-squad games, so amongst our own teams and larger groups, and intra-squad modified games in our club so we can play amongst ourselves. Like U12 boys or U12 girls can play, you're up, you're older, you're down. That would be in soccer phase 2, return to play. And then phase 3 is a return to soccer, more as we know it, where we can be competing against other clubs in either a club competition or league. We felt as a club that we needed to break that up a little bit further. We wanted to make sure we were as aware as possible of risk. So we talked about phase 1 being return to train, as we discussed, and we broke phase 2 up into 2 sections, a 2A and a 2B. Once we go through phase 1, we're focusing on individual things. We're then going to phase 2A, where we're not going to increase the group size, but we're going to increase the potential of like 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s in training. The reason is, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there right now, is that as you progress through the soccer phases, that the protocol decreases. As you'll know, and you'll see in the rest of the presentation, the protocol does not decrease. We maintain the same safety protocols throughout this whole process as long as this pandemic is going. We want to be in line with government protocols, so our safety precautions don't decrease. So we want to first start in a small group when we're having contact, make sure everything's okay, and then slowly go into bigger group. Because if there was a chance of a positive test, we want to make sure that it's contained as much as possible in this process for that. So we just broke that up a little bit slower. Again, we want to mitigate risk wherever possible. What that actually means in terms of these phases, phase 1 right now, which is what we're going back to in return to train, is no contact. So our social distance measures in place, mostly technical based activities. So your son or daughter is going to be working on mostly individual movements, safe movement patterns, things like that. We may be this week introducing some minimal passing in our test week, although we're going to keep it minimal in session 1, but we are allowed to pass the ball amongst each other. Phase 2A will be the same group size, but this is when we get into 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. Phase 2B is actually when we would increase the group size, when they'd be having contact, and then that would introduce maybe a more frequent time of contact. Phase soccer phase 3 is when we get into full contact. Each province has their own guidelines around each of the phases, so we continue to stay in contact. Some of our guidelines may change based upon what's given by the federal, provincial, and municipal health authorities. But we just want everybody to know that this is how we're phasing through it. And if you notice, the risk assessment tool and our screening, nothing changes. Like I said, the protocol doesn't change for us. Depending on the age of your child, you'll notice that we have to take that into consideration when designing sessions. So our Soccer for Life age, meaning U13 through U18, it's very simply because we don't have to, we're okay with one coach and 8 or 9 kids. That's okay in a group of 10, to start training. But as we go younger, that might not be okay. So in younger ages, we may be talking about one group of 5 or one group of 6, because we want to make sure that the coach and or supervisor of the players, is going to be able to observe them and keep them safe the whole time. So some organizational considerations that we've already started to do. When possible, be flexible with age group identifiers. So that means if there's siblings that are training with each other that are close in age or or of opposite gender, so that we can limit the cross-contamination in groups. We already shortened the length of our training session and time slots, and we'll review that in the schedule to accommodate and return to play games, which this is very long away, but make sure we have enough of a safe start. Wanted to make sure we try to keep phases as long as possible, and this is more on the government side. They're reviewing 4 weeks, between phases. I think in the initial phase, it might be a little shorter depending on what the government decides to do with Windsor Essex. Scheduling considerations for the facilities. This is very important. We'll touch on it later. Reducing the overlap of practice. The chaos coming into parking lots and leaving parking lots will not exist. It cannot exist because we're very strict about how and who and where players are with the facilities. We're going to be constantly providing player information to coaches, parents, and players about the facility, which field entrances will be used. This week, as we said, is our test week of the process of where your entrance. There's an entrance point from St. Greg's Road. There's an entrance point from Tecumseh Road. Depending on your field assignment that you get assigned, you'll make sure to go in that parking lot and use that drop-off area. Obviously, our coaches will be working to ensure the rule of two is met. We're in a big facility. We're wide open. Our facility restrictions, we've actually gone above and beyond. We were cleared to have 60 players on the facility. We actually are staying closer to 40, so we'll be between 35 and 45 athletes training. Again, we'll talk about that and why and how that traffic's going to flow. Our sanitizations stations will be on site upon entry. When we go to games, obviously there's no transfer of paper, and we'll talk about how we do the waivers. Obviously, many of you, I've been surprised how many have done already. And then just when it comes to lightning and thunder, we're going to be a lot more cautious with weather cancellations. Just again, from a coaching standpoint, we're ensuring a safe environment all the time. We're not going to be using bibs at the beginning, but if they are eventually used, they will always be clean. So no equipment will be double used for a session. So they'd be changed out after every session to be one use. And our coaches will wipe down equipment or field marshals every single session. Our coaches have the option of wearing face masks. Everybody has the option of wearing face masks, but in an outdoor facility, we cannot and will not be forcing anyone to wear a face mask. Just something we've taken into consideration, using age-appropriate considerations. So what our session looks like for different ages. We'll talk about in a little bit where the sessions are going to be designed to have everyone will be doing a similar version of the exercise that'll be slightly modified potentially for each age. So you'll notice some differences. They will be staying in their existing small groups within in soccer phase 1 or phase 2. There will be no heading or hand contact with the ball through any of this. And then right now with the heat, along with our water breaks, they have the opportunity to sanitize when as they work through it. Our parent considerations, make sure that the waiver is signed and return to play registrations completed. So that's what was sent out today. And like I said, the number of registrants has been phenomenal. The pre-screening questionnaire to be completed. So that link goes live tomorrow and before every training, and we'll remind people of this all the time, before every training session, the pre-screening questionnaire talking about symptoms needs to be completed because that's going to be not only help with contact tracing, but we'll assure that we have the safest environment possible. Obviously ensure the child is healthy and no sign of symptoms. Drop off and pick up player while maintaining desired rules and regulations. So there, where it says being a spectator if allowed, in the initial phase, we want parents to be there, parked in their vehicle outside the fence. There will be no non-coach, non-volunteer, non-player people allowed inside the facility. So within the fence, everybody coming in is getting screened and is authorized to be there. Do not carpool unless the athlete is part of your extended bubble family. So we don't want to see minivans pulling up and having 6 kids get out of them if they're not all in the bubble. That's something we don't want to see. Also because contact tracing that we have to do is who drove everyone, and that's something we don't want to see. Upon drop-off, make sure your child has all the items they need to safely participate. And then we expect the parents or players to assist us in the contact tracing questions that we have upon check-in. So just verifying if you filled out the questionnaire that mom's driving you, we want to know that mom dropped you off. And that's something that we have to provide to the health unit, history of contact tracing. Um, just again, I'm going to talk about what we want the athletes to come. So the athletes will not be, and this is why we're having a player talk later. The athletes will not be allowed to bring their soccer bag. They will be bringing a Ziploc bag, and they should have it clearly labeled. So like a clear plastic bag. And they should have their water bottle to make sure that a mouth spout is not open to open air. This would be the safest possible way. We don't want to see kids eating snacks, but we understand that for health reasons, children may need a safety snack if there's a child that's a diabetic or something like that. And that's information that is also in the questionnaire so that the coach is constantly aware of. If they have any allergies or blow their nose, they need their own tissues, and they should be ideally bringing their own hand sanitizer and own wipes for the hydration and sanitization breaks. Ideally, when we want players arriving, we encourage them to wear masks from the point they leave their car to the point they leave their equipment area. Again, that is not something we can force or enforce. We expect athletes to come prepared to train and play. So fully dressed, have their ball ready and things like that. We will not be using locker rooms, and no public outdoor restrooms are available. So we have essentially 45 minutes of active training. You're in an hour time slot to begin. There is no public washrooms available. There is no portable washroom option available. So we need families to be responsible and individuals to be responsible. Understanding that there's no washroom. If a child ends up needing to go to the washroom, the parent, they will be instructed their coach, talk to the marshal, and they can go on and exit with their parents. Again, athletes should bring their own soccer balls. The clubs can loan balls to players if they don't have one for financial reasons. So if you forgot your ball, that's not a financial reason to not have your ball. Bring your ball. The players will get told again and again and again, this is not a time where we forget our ball. It will end up in 45 minutes of doing the exact same practice without a soccer ball. They have the responsibility to bring their own equipment to the field, and that's when it will be sanitized there. They'll be instructed on what color to wear. If and when we get to the point where they need different colors, they can get told to wear a different color jersey, so that again, in the early phases, we're not using equipment. And then at the initial stage, we won't be giving players pennies, but as we go on, we may get to that situation where some of our older teams will be given pennies so they can have to wear. But I think with everyone's jerseys and 2 jerseys, we're going to go with that with most teams. Our emergency response plan, I'm not going to go through and read every part of this, but essentially the emergency response plan mostly deals with worst case scenarios for us, and understanding that there's an inherent risk in returning to play. We have to know how to deal with the potential of a positive case within our club membership environment, and we have to understand how we work through it. So there are 3 phases to our emergency response plan. There's the pre-pandemic phase, our planning efforts, education of our club members, education of our board, our staff, and developing the protocol to work alongside our government, our municipality, and get everybody back to sport. There's a potential of a positive test phase. So if there's a confirmation of a COVID positive test within the club, how we declare it, and how we activate our COVID-19 action plan, and then a post-pandemic phase. So when we get to the point where the provincial health officer declares that the pandemic is over, how we handle that, and what lessons can we learn. So for us, it's a mandatory risk management tool. It's to reduce the time to response, and then we have one key leader that we know how we go through. It's basically to make sure that we have the most efficient communications plan, and that the ball doesn't get dropped anywhere. So in the event that a positive test is confirmed, it goes through our ERP lead, just Thomas Wimmer, who's our club admin, and he's also on the board of directors. It then gets brought to the club president and board of directors. That team, then if the individual affected is under 18, it goes to their parents, and they're directed to the professional health authority. And then the team coach and the internal team communications they've haven't had a positive test and what the restrictions are now. That they'll be shutting down for the quarantine for the 14 days. From there, we activate the ERP, how we communicate to our members and staff and volunteers and membership, how we work with our district, Ontario Soccer, and our local health authority until the emergency is resolved and everybody's healed and or has extended the quarantine time. Again, just so you're aware of, again, the work gone into our emergency response plan, the responsibility of our ERP lead, and the communication structure of exactly what happens if a positive test comes through, what we're responsible for disinfecting, how we will handle that event. And then post-pandemic phase, how we communicate it, and how we update our emergency response plan for future use with lessons learned. Just to know about our emergency response plan and additional notes. Again, it's all about how we respond to a positive test and our restrictions upon returning after timeline and also negative test for those who are in direct contact. As I said before, emergency response plan lead is Thomas, who's our administrative lead at our club. You can get him at his personal email at t.wimmer@tecumsehsoccerclub.com or just really simply admin@tecumsehsoccerclub.com. This is enough for emergency response planning and things like that. Now we'll talk about what it takes to get back on the field and returning to play. So a lot of the stuff you've already partaken in and started to happen is our pre-screening. So you've already gone and done the pre-screening registration link that was sent out today. That's a must. So it's not anything that it has to pay. We talked about that before. It's the with the groups, it's their waiver, it's the waivers and the declarations that need to be signed from Ontario Soccer and from the club. So it was directly derived from Ontario and Canada Soccer. We also, from that point, want us to be familiar with, and this link will be sent out, self-screening and understanding what COVID symptoms are. We want to make sure anyone who's diagnosed or has been in contact with any person who's been diagnosed must not attend practice in any game, and same with a volunteer or spectator. Our pre-screening or return process is very simple. The player and parent review the TSC pandemic policy, and through this education, as a response to that, you register online. You review the mandatory wellness questionnaire. So that's tomorrow when the Google Form online link goes live. That's, again, our daily pre-training link. Parent and player confirm attendance or non-attendance in Sports Engine. So this is where keeping your Sports Engine app is 100% essential of who's going, who's where. If there's non-attendance, we need a reason all the time, because otherwise there will be a follow-up asking, is it because is everything okay? Is it an injury? Is it a schedule conflict? Or is it something to do with the COVID questionnaire? Because obviously if you don't succeed here, you cannot attend. The questionnaires, if any of you are back in a workplace, it's pretty, the majority of the questions are around symptoms. Have you had any of the below symptoms? I just want to go over the household thing as was referenced in the waiver. This does not apply. This applies to non-essential travel. So if you're federally exempt, like for work purposes or essential service purposes, this does not apply. So this is not the actual wording of the question, but as you saw in the registration today. So pre-screening questionnaire, Google Form link goes live for July 15th. So every time before you practice, you must complete this. Before each day that your son or daughter trains at 5 p.m. It assists in contact tracing, and you'll get a PDF receipt provided to the participant. So it's emailed to you. So now you have proof that you've completed it for that day, and we have proof in our internal database that you've completed the questionnaire as well. When I say it assists in contact tracing, this is our obligation and process for contact tracing, which we believe is very important. Each coach, not only do you do the questionnaire, each coach has a report from Sports Engine before training begins, so we know what attendance is expected. A check-in and volunteer will record the daily log for contact tracing information. This information gets provided to our TSC admin lead each week. So after every week, every night we'll collect the daily logs. At the end of the week, Thomas will file the information. Tecumseh Soccer Club will not use this information for any other purposes outside of contact tracing, required by the municipal or provincial government. After 6 weeks, this information will be deleted from a record. So we're just shredding the contact information. So when we say little Johnny got to practice at 5:55, his mom dropped him off, and he went to train with group 2011 boys, group 1. After 6 weeks, that gets deleted from our records. Our daily log looks literally simply like this. So I just want to go to the answer a couple questions. So the questionnaire gets completed electronically. So it'll be done via Google form. The link will be the number one link right when you'll go to tecumsehsoccerclub.com. As well, you'll have it in your email, but it'll also be all this information will be front and center on our Tecumseh Soccer Club webpage. In the short term, the priority of the webpage is to be a catch-all information. We understand that as parents in a family, you're getting countless emails involving tons of important items, from school board surveys and all the other activities that you potentially could be involved in. So we want to make sure that this information is all front and center. There will be no paper exchanged at the field, so everything's going to be done electronically. So you'll be able to do that on the device. We also understand that that's why we made it electronically, so it's mobile friendly too. Not everybody wants to go home, print out a form, open the computer if you need to do it mobile. We understand that too. And then for masks are up to the players. Cloth masks are okay. You're social distance from everyone else. So your mask choice is up to you. Facility consideration. So here are the fields. Here in the bottom left is the back of Zares. The left side of the field is St. Gregory's Road. This is LaSour's parking lot. This is LaSour's field. This is our usual area. If you notice, initially we would talk about potentially having the space for 8 groups of 10 on this area. Again, we want it to be as safe as possible using the space. If you just so I thought I clarified that. So the screen, just like the waiver has, just about the training outside, if you're an essential, if you're federally exempt, like if you're able to cross the border right now, so that deemed federally exempt, then the as is on the waiver sheet, as is also going to be in the questionnaire, you'll be, if you're federally exempt, if somebody in your household is federally exempt in crossing the border, then that question does not apply to you. So if the person have mom or dad has that job, they don't have to quarantine every time they come home because they're federally exempt. That question does not apply to them. So it's anybody who's not federally exempt. So I hope I answered that. And the same as that note was in the registration today, that note is also on our questionnaire, like the live questionnaire. It's just not on that picture because that was the original one. So this is our facility, and when we show you the graphic, keep this in mind. It was too hard to draw over this facility. So I just want to go over our facility considerations. Took a size and capacity work to the municipality, our actual training area size and layout, our coach and volunteer staffing that would be required, traffic flow for pickup and drop off, parking, sanitization station and guidelines, how much first aid and where the PPE will be located, our hydration station and guidelines as we're in the middle of what feels like the hottest month ever, and then our contingency plans, what could go wrong and where. And we keep asking ourselves every day, any other considerations? And trust me, tomorrow, and Thursday and Saturday, not everything will go right, but I can tell you everything will go safe. So every time a decision gets made or a logjam happens or anything, everything will be priority of safety. We would stop every practice and for 30 minutes still if we need to handle a safety issue. There's not, the priority number one is safe environment. Right now, especially in the early stages, to get into a safe routine. So originally, and I just want to kind of walk you through how we worked. Originally, we said, okay, well, we can have 10 in a training space. So we would have, very simply, here's what we do. We'd have 8 training areas with 10 each, 9 kids and a coach, and here's how we'd look, and here's where our coaches would be, and here's where intake, and here's where. But when we went to the town, we said, look, that's a bit crowded. We went through this model. Doesn't really work. We have a lot of congestion in places. We didn't want to do that. So we started thinking, okay, well, maybe we're going to have traffic flow this way, outflow that way. Maybe we could work there. On June 23rd, we decided with the town, and they notified us that 6 training areas instead of 8 will be allowed. So social groups of 10. And this is when we talked about, this is why our communication process is becoming so important. Because any changes to guidelines, we need to be aware of, right? So this is when Windsor Essex was trying to get into that stage 2. They said, hey, this is what we want to do. So we modified our plan to here, and we started working on these areas. We went with 3 entry points and exit points. We built a plan off that, and we started to work. And when we reviewed that plan from a strategic and operational standpoint, we said, it really makes sense if we're going to mitigate risk. We need to reduce the number of players in the facility to try to minimize the traffic flow and to just manage the logistics of everything to where a point where we feel like we're as safe as we possibly can. So the final facility plan looks like this, and this is what will be front and center on our website in the morning. There'll be 2 points of entry. So one from St. Gregory's Road on the left side, again, reminder of the oversight, and one from Tecumseh Road. Okay. The map that gets put up will have the proper field names because obviously this copied from the old page, but the 3 fields closest to St. Gregory's will be called St. Gregory's. The 2 fields closest to Tecumseh will be called Tecumseh. Can't believe I did not change that. My apologies. Upon point of entry in green, you'll have a volunteer check-in table. That'll be stage 1. So it's stage 1 in their check-in. They do their temperature. We verify that they've already done the online protocol, and they sanitize there. Once they've gone in there, they're allowed to go in, and they'll be allowed to queue along the fence to get to checkpoint 2. Okay. On the outside of the fence, there will also be a queuing area. So the players are going to be instructed very clearly. And like I said, traffic flow is going to be simple. The good thing is, like I said, is we're dealing with about 20 people coming in on each side at each time. So it's manageable. But the queue is basically the distance of the fence posts, and there'll be colored dots where the kids stand. So along the fence posts, there'll be colored dots where they stand. Originally, we were going to use markers. Then we on the ground. Then we talked about painting on the ground. Now I have kids looking down instead of looking up when they should be aware of their surroundings. We didn't like that option. Again, safety is our priority. So we said along the social distance on the fence posts, they see it on the wall, picture as if they're going into recess. So they'll be able to queue outside the fence to enter the facility once they're approved. Upon entry, they'll queue inside the fence to be called forth to the check-in tent, and then they'll be released to their training area, released to their equipment area to put down their equipment. If they don't pass screening point check 1, so they didn't do their waiver, they didn't do the wellness questionnaire, they didn't do anything. If the parent's here, they'll be instructed to go back with their parent who is parked and wait. If their parent is not there, there will be a tent just outside the fence here, and on the Tecumseh side, just outside the fence there that is being overseen by the volunteer, where they will wait in the waiting area for their parent or guardian to either resolve the situation or pick them up and take them home, depending upon the reason why they didn't pass checkpoint 1. So like I said, they go from checkpoint 2, they get to the player equipment area. At the player equipment area, same thing. Dots along the fence where they put their bag. Remember that their bag needs to be labeled. Remember that it needs to be very simple what they bring with them, only essentials. They should already be dressed and ready to go. And at that point, the coach will then come over and address the players about do symptom check 3, go over the safety protocol and procedures for the session. Remind them that where we have first aid and sanitization and hydration tents in the middle, along with volunteers, and then get them into the session. Obviously, with the heat, it gives us natural stoppages in order for players to have the option to go and sanitize. Okay, we're telling this to all the players as well. Sessions on this Wednesday, this Thursday, and this Saturday, okay, are 1%, maybe less, focused on soccer. This is all to get the players, parents, staff, and volunteers used to the flow of the system. So the soccer is an added entity that's great this week. We need to make sure we get all the checkpoints right, the process right, the entry right, the entry into the session right, and then after training is done, the timed exit right. The same way in which we queue upon entry, fields will be instructed by their field marshal and brought over to queue upon the fence, or if you're on the Tecumseh side, queue upon the fence and exit the same way. So the same way in which they come in, they will be queued upon exit. And again, with either a field marshal or a coach instructing them along the way. When we notify that their parent is here or guardian is here to pick them up, we will release them one by one. Picture lining up as we leave school. The reason why the exit is so controlled is, again, I think one of the biggest misinformation parts is like, come to practice, do all these protocols to make sure we're safe, and then, okay, we leave. Okay, guys, exit, socially distance. No. Everything they do inside the facility under our control is going to be above and beyond the guidelines required to keep every player safe. That's what we're doing as Tecumseh Soccer Club. If there are moments, if something goes wrong in the session, so if there's somebody takes a ball to a face, if equipment gets moved, our volunteers and field marshals in the central tents will be handling the situation. At no point is the coach turning their back on the session. It's not like it's not normal. It's not business as usual. So little Sally rolls her ankle. Okay, field marshal, first aid tent will handle it, and bring them there, get them sanitized if they need sanitized, and then is their adult here, and then have a safe exit towards their adult. If not, bring them to the waiting area, wait for the safe exit with their family. More now than ever, again, at no point are our coaches or volunteers, unless they need something emergency tended to, we're not going to get in the personal space and within the social distance of one of the players. So that's field layout. This map I cannot believe that I had to resize these fields, and I know exactly why I deleted the 2 Tecumseh fields. But this map will get posted along with the traffic. There's a traffic flow map that I have, but it's not made in PowerPoint, so it didn't do well to this. But it's just an image to show the parking lots, where you go in and where you go out. What the individual training area will look and feel like. It's pretty simple. This is like an 8-player model. Players can move. So again, a misconception maybe from some of the players is that they can't move. No, they can move from space to space as long as they're socially distant. We will have, with all exercises, especially in week 1, starting areas. Each of their areas will be spaced and socially distant with a 2-meter area between every player. During the initial soccer phase, there's a buffer zone between the players and the coaches. So the coach is not going within the session, in between the players, and doing that. We're instructing and leading the session from a safe buffer zone with all the players. Okay, so very much more than ever, the session belongs to the players. So we are laying things out, instructing them, and working them through. But we're very slowly getting to the point where every player, where they need to take ownership of what they're doing. And like I said, here's where the coaches area will be going alongside. Field timeline schedule, and this is where you're going to see some modifications, but we sent out the general link. We have 6 p.m., a 7 p.m., and 8 p.m. slot. Really, it's moved by about 5 minutes. So we want players checking in for group 1 at 5:50 so that we can begin training at 6. So that means their drop-off point, their check-in point entering the facility. Because at 6:45 they depart, and that gives us a 10-minute buffer to have the second training group check in at 6:55, 7 p.m. on field, 7:05 p.m. training. And I didn't want to put weird 5-minute intervals until everybody understood why. Same thing with training group 3. There's a group 4 on here for if and when we move to a lighted facility, if we had longer, but I would just left that on there so we understand. Going back to the fields, yes, tomorrow, so we made the team schedule. I'm just answering a question. We made a team schedule. Now the coaches are delivering the pods. Once I have the pod schedule, then I can, tomorrow, everybody will be notified when they get the questionnaire link. It'll say, coaches will have that information. Hey guys, we're St. Greg's Field 2, we're St. Greg's. And you'll know whether you're entering through St. Greg's or not. So if you're the 2009 girls, which parking lot you're using. Just a little bit about our training plans and exercises, how we developed them. Our training plan is developed by the training plan is developed by myself, the technical lead, for the first 4 weeks of training, and I provide it to the coaches. Any variation in training exercises are approved by myself as technical lead. So it's not coaches just running the sessions and maybe there's this. No. And then these sessions will be posted publicly as well. One, for the players to know. We think this is a pretty big time of anxiety, and we want to be able to get them through it as much as possible. And also parents, if parents want to make sure that the sessions are safe. So just to go through a overall summary, we want to make sure all players have a clean bill of health. We're asking players don't carpool. We want to make sure that parents drop and pick players off at the entrance they're asked to, and arrive as closely on time. They'll be able to sanitize as long as they get there. And right now, the individual active part will be 45 minutes to start. We're going to try to keep them set up for age-specific categories. And during phase 1, they're going to be training with the same group of players. So we're not going to be mixing or changing groups based on phase 1. They're not going to be miles away from their teammates, but they're also, if your team's split into 2 groups, they're not going to be all immediately close. No handshakes, high fives, and there will be no team talks following training. Everything will be logistic-based communication. Again, this is just a summary that we did. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to make sure that this is included. This presentation link will also be available via PDF as soon as I edit my error as well. So again, just review the process. In phase 1, return to train. Want to complete the waiver and registration. Parents complete the questionnaire by 5 p.m. and update Sports Engine. We stay within government restrictions. And we have no parents inside the facility for training sessions. They bring their own ball, leave their bag in the car, and only bring a clear bag. General practice, we're keeping it very, very much individual based. We're working on physical movement, safe movement patterns, and technical work. There'll be no technical work in groups. And then if anybody if anybody tests positive, the group will be quarantined for 14 days. It's a coach's choice to wear PPE, and players wearing masks is also optional. I don't want to go too far into phase 2A because this will be sent out in if and when we move to this point. We will stay in phase 2A in the same size groups, and we will move into like 3v3, 1v1, 2v2 games. Same kind of stuff with a little more intensity, some small unit work, and same thing. It's a question or option up to coaches and players to wear masks. Until phase 2B, that's when we would be up to 18 players with a coach. So could have potentially a group of 20 as long as it's allowed by the government. And then I just want to go. I'll address the question. If somebody arrives late, they will still have to go through all the checkpoints because everybody will still be at the checkpoint process, and we will get them in as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. Question about the parking lot situation, knowing with the heat. Okay, I know everybody's not going to wait inside their car, but we need a socially distant parking lot. We will not be having people up near the fence. That's not something we can do. So we want to make sure that everyone in the parking lot is safely socially distant. At other clubs have had reports of some over-enthusiastic parents in the parking lot running up, hugging each other, and then planning a tailgate next Monday for practice. That's not something we want to do. That happened at another club, and they ran into a situation. So we want to be examples for our kids. So as long as we're following the rules, that we cannot work beyond that. Just really quickly as we finish up, the individual training schedule was sent out, and it'll be posted so everybody will know. As we move into phase 2A and phase 2B, the training session and frequency will get longer, obviously. Our individual coach action plan that they had to follow, how we went through the survey, they're forming their training groups, provide the individual schedule, obviously for setup and takedown. And now I'm finalizing volunteer schedules. I want to thank everyone for their volunteering. Just a little bit about staffing and volunteering. We thank you so much, number one, and for the donations and things like that. We're bringing them in on as needed basis every night. That's why the schedule is so important. We don't want to have too many people. Usually it's like, oh, no, there's not too many volunteers. No, we don't want to have too many people. The coaches cannot resume a full workload. So we're trying to all phase in within one another. So collaboration on our end is essential. And then the scheduling programming, was modified as we've talked about in many of the parent meetings. Just kind of our process. This is when it was presented on June 23rd to our board. Our board sent back feedback. Our municipality actually approved it right away. Obviously, we've been working with them and for the last 6 weeks with other provinces and areas on this. And then on June 30th, our plan was approved by the club, but finally, the final one, our municipality approved it on June 25th. And Tecumseh Soccer will return to play. Night 1 is tomorrow night, July 15th. And we are super excited. It'll be a relief when we get back out there safely. So like I said, any further questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. If there's individual questions, you can throw them to your coach or throw them out, to us. Like I said, it's going to be a learning test process the first few days. Everybody's going to, but one thing we won't compromise on is safety. So every decision will get made upon the safety of everyone inside that fence, from player all the way up to, with the priority of the player all the way up to all the adults involved. Awesome. When there's no questions about something like this, that's a good sign. We will be putting out some infographics, just as reminders to the players and things, because again, it's, I think, just keeping it as keeping them as everyone as reminded as much as possible is going to be positive. So most of your team should have already posted it on Sports Engine. Any of the teams who haven't, if you're a grassroots team, it's just because you might not be starting till Saturday or Monday or Tuesday. So if you're if you're a younger thing, if a player rides their bike to practice, the bike needs to be locked up in the waiting area, and they will be they'll have to go through the same screening process as everything else. Yes, in terms of entry to the facility, ideally, and tomorrow when you pull in, it will be we have like traffic barrels bringing you in. There's a sign where we ask you to drop off. Ideally, we would like you to park and then your player to come to the queue. To come to the queue. So Thomas Wimmer is our ERP lead, and he's overseeing the field protocol, and myself. There will be any of the individuals in the central tents. They make sure that protocol is followed at each area.
We will thank you for the patience you're actually showing to us. The club is doing everything in the best interest of your children. We're trying to keep you as safe as possible. Uh, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to approach even any of the board members. This is not, for us, it is a difficult time to go through it. Ryan knows that as well. Ryan worked really, really hard. I appreciate all he does. All the coaches worked really, really hard to put these plans together. Without their help, we couldn't have done it. Without your parents' patience, we couldn't do it. And I know it is important for the kids to come back on the fields. And this is one of our biggest obligations, to get them back on the field, keep their mental health intact as much as possible, keep their physical health intact, and see their friends.
Yeah, that's that's a priority. So if your kids are waiting to get on, like the kids are on a different link. So I think some kids were trying to get on this link. So if your kids are on the player one, for players 2008 and older, I'll be switching over now. And again, I just want to say thank you. And again, there was one more question about the positive case program. So I'll make sure our emergency response plan is on the website as well. You can review it, exactly how we communicate if there was to be a positive test or a quarantine situation, how we communicate to the individual team flows through Thomas, through our club board of directors and the directors, out to the manager and coach, out to the team, individual team, and then how it goes out through the club, and let the club know what steps have been taken. So if your players are signing on to this link, it's not. I believe it's the second link in the email. So just let them know. And I'm going to switch over right now. Again, thank you, everyone. If you missed something, like follow up with any questions. Tomorrow, we're at the field and with the township most of the day, but I've scheduled periodic hours in the day where I'll be checking, emails between 11 and 12, 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5, like kind of a last check. So other than that, I'll be on the grass getting ready tomorrow. All right. Very excited to get back, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And hopefully the players one is a little bit condensed. So we'll go through things shortly. All right. Thank you.
Good night.